there, everyone.
Hey, are we live?
Yes, we are.
Very good.
Welcome to QSC Tech Talk.
Yes, welcome.
Yay.
It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah.
It's been real busy around our parts, but
Yeah.
we're super excited to hop back on today. We've got a pretty
Yes.
exciting topic lined up for you.
Absolutely.
So
Well,
let's
before
just
we
go.
Oops.
I'll let you start us off.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to introduce us, Jason, because, hey,
That's
we're the
a fun idea.
hosts.
Yes, we are.
I'm Golden Preciado, audio engineer and House of Worship specialist with QSC, and I'm here with the rockin' awesome Jason Fernandez.
Thank
He's
you.
the live sound training specialist with QSC. Today, we're going to talk about some really cool stuff about output routing tips and techniques. And we're going to talk about signal flow and all the cool ways that you can route your output mixes using the TouchMix-30 auxes. So, Jason, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Take us away.
All right, here we go. This is a fun one. This is going to be I just going to put a few things out there up front. This is a slightly more advanced topic. Like Golden mentioned, we are going to be getting into signal flow and things like that. I got some graphs that I made, so we're gonna get pretty geeky with this one. But this is a lot of fun, and it's gonna hopefully highlight some of the cool creative routing processes that are available to you in the TouchMix. I think a lot of people don't really understand just the possibilities that are built into the TouchMix-30 specifically, and the different ways you can route your audio and you can direct your audio and you can create really cool mixed combinations and things like that serve different purposes. So we're going to shed a little bit of light on that. Hopefully you'll learn a couple of things. And I'm going to actually start off with some examples of why you might use some of these routing techniques or a couple applications as to when you would need something like this, just to kind of set the playing field for us here. So my first application I'm going to throw out there, it would be in like a venue, like a nightclub or a restaurant bar setting, where maybe you've got a venue room or a showroom or with a stage where you have live performances happening in there. But you have some ancillary rooms as well. Maybe you have a balcony, or maybe you have a patio outside. Maybe you have speakers that run to the bathrooms. Maybe you have delay speakers kind of placed in the venue somewhere like that. And so all of these different locations are going to require audio, and the mix that you give the different locations might need to be slightly tailored to those locations. They might, just running your sound that's your mix that's created for your venue room might not work for the patio. It might not work for, in the bathrooms or the balcony. So you might need to get a little creative and tailor those mixes a little bit. And there's some really cool ways that we can do that. Another example would be House of Worship. The processes that we're going to show you today are widely used within the House of Worship area, within those applications. And the reason for that is much to what I kind of just alluded to. Within a church or a house of worship, you have your main sanctuary or your worship room. But then you're probably going to have what's known as a cry room. You're probably going to have a lobby. You might have a patio area. You might have a loft or a balcony area.
Our church has a courtyard, and then we also have to send to an assisted listening system. So a lot of output routing that happens in house of worship situations.
And the other thing that you're probably going to have, especially recently, and this is something we covered in one of our previous topics, you're probably going to have a broadcast mix.
Yes.
Okay. So you're probably streaming your service, over the internet somehow, and that audio, you're creating a mix, for that streamed service. And so there's really cool ways that you can utilize, your broadcast mix and redirect that mix to serve other purposes.
Exactly.
So there you go. That's what we're going to be talking about. Now let's get into some signal flow. Let's kind of get down our level setting here and talk about how the signal flow works traditionally in the mixer. And for that, I have some diagrams that I made.
Bring on the diagrams.
My artwork here. Here we go. I made this just for you guys. Okay, I'm going to start with this slide. I actually went back and forth whether I thought this was necessary, but I kept it in just to kind of get us the whole signal path here. So what I drew up here is kind of the standard input to output signal path within the main mix on TouchMix. So if you follow this along, I've just kind of got multiple channels copied and pasted so you can get the idea, of a multi-channel mix happening. So each channel that you have in your mix is going to have your source, your audio. It's going to enter the mixer through a physical connection. It's going to go into your preamp, and then it's going to pass through the EQ, your dynamics processing, and then it goes out to then it's going to go to your effects if you have effects, but I didn't include that here. It's going to go to your channel fader, which is where you're making your mix. Then you have your pan control, and then after all that signal gets routed to your main fader and then sent out of your output. And as you can see, that same signal path happens for every single channel you have. Okay, so if you keep that in mind, let's take a look at what a channel mix then looks like. So all of your individual channels are running.
Adam, I feel your pain. Adam says, if only I could use my TouchMix-30 in the UK. Still going to be a while.
I'm sorry, Adam.
The world will come back.
It will.
Yes.
Dang. Just hang in there, man.
Hang in there. Yeah, definitely.
It'll turn around. But
we'll use this time for education.
Yeah, exactly. When it does come around, you'll be well educated and have a wealth of knowledge to get yourself going quickly.
Right.
Okay, so now what we're looking at here is just the fader mix. So we've seen what the signal path is for each individual channel. So at this point, we're just kind of looking at the fader mix, and the signal from each channel, is going to be kind of mixed together, and then it's going to hit your main output fader and go to your outputs, which then goes out to your main house speakers or whatever that might be. That's the main mix, okay? And then we have aux mixes. So here's just a simple look at aux 1. Not much different in the way this looks when you draw it out like this, right? So we have a fader mix. All of that fader mix, all of that signal gets mixed together and then directed to the aux master output, and then sent to the physical output out to whatever that's going to serve. Could be a monitor on stage, could be being sent to a broadcast device, could be sent to an in-ear transponder. It could be sent to all kinds of things. The point is, we're able to create an independent fader mix that is different from the main mix, and that's going to go to a different output that's going to a different source. Okay, that's the only thing I'm trying to illustrate here. The other point that this makes is that the aux in and of itself is mono versus the main mix, where you end up with a stereo output, so you can create stereo width in your mix. The auxes are all mono outputs, and that's it. So that's an aux. The reason I wanted to show it to you like this, after showing you the initial signal flow chart of all the individual channels, the signal path that they go, is that it only exists once. So you're not getting that signal path per input on your auxes. So all of that's happening up front, and all that processing is global, no matter what mix you're in. So your EQ is going to pass through your preamp. You're going to get your EQ, you're going to get your dynamics, and you're going to get your effects. And then all that stuff is global. And so all we're really affecting in an aux mix is we're creating a different fader mix, or we're creating a different blend of those channels. Okay.
Yep.
Now let's say I want to take my mix. I've created a really cool mix, a broadcast mix in aux 1. And I think that exact mix would work really great for my cry room, or for maybe my balcony, or something, some other location. I think, that mix sounds really good. I just want that mix, like it sounds, to go to another output, to go to another one of my auxes. Now, here's where we get creative. On the mixer, we have the ability to send auxes 1 through 8 directly to auxes 9 through 14. And so let's take a look. Now we have aux 9, okay? That's its own, going to its own location, as its own output, its own master fader. Within aux 9, I have a fader called aux 1. And I'm going to show that to you in real time on the board. But just so you can kind of visualize what the signal is doing, what the signal path is doing, it's just taking that end signal, that my complete fader mix, my balance, my blend from aux 1, and it is sending it directly into aux 9, and then it is going out aux 9, aux 9's output. So whatever's connected to that output, now we're hearing exactly what's happening in aux 1 as in aux 9 as well. There you go. And then what's really cool beyond that, so that in and of itself is great. So we're basically kind of matrixing, you could say. Other mixers do a lot of other kind of older and large scale mixers have what's called matrixing, or a matrix mixer, in which you have the ability to kind of send any of your outputs to a matrix, and then within the matrix you can assign, those outputs mixes to any of the other physical outputs.
Yeah,
we're sort of doing that here, but we're kind of bypassing the matrix element itself. We're just giving you the ability to kind of just take a signal from an aux and send it to another aux directly. That's cool. And then, so once we've done that, okay, I've got my aux1 in aux9. I still have all of the channel faders in aux9, right? So if I need to, I can blend a little bit of those individual channels back in to the mix that I've already created on aux1. Okay, so let's say, my aux1, sticking with the example I already set up, aux1 is my broadcast mix. Okay, and that sounds super awesome going out to my broadcast, and the people on the internet are hearing that great. So I take that mix and I send it into like my cry room. Now let's just stay within the house of worship scenario for the beginning here. I'm going to port that into my cry room. And then I go into that room, or I get feedback from somebody else in that room saying, hey, you know what? It's sounding pretty good. I think it needs a little bit more of the acoustic guitar though. Or maybe for whatever reason, the pastor's microphone isn't quite as loud, when he's speaking in that cry room versus the other elements that are happening. Okay, cool. All I have to do is now I just go to those individual faders and I just blend them up a little bit. So I can make a blended mix. I can still use the individual channel faders for those elements, even though I've got my direct mix from aux1 in there. Now I can blend in a little more of the pastor's mic along with what I'm getting from aux1, or a little more of the acoustic guitar, or whatever it might be that we need a little more of. We have the ability to do that. So we're kind of leveraging both of our auxes here to create a super cool custom mix for our cry room, without necessarily having to go in and start from scratch and build an entire mix for that location. So so it can save a lot of time, and it's a really efficient way to kind of work when you're working in these scenarios where you have different locations that you're trying to mix for all at once.
So Jason, while you demonstrate this to everyone, I'm going to ask, you're going to bring up your TouchMix, right?
Sure. Let's go ahead and do that now, because that's the end of my slideshow. Boom, we'll pop it over. There we are.
I have some sessions that, active sessions that do exactly what you're describing.
Oh, cool.
So Brad, if you could take me down for a second, I am going to hook up my second camera and awesome. Get that going.
Super fun. All right. Well, while you're
Brad, are you able to take?
Yep. Hello, everybody. I am now by myself. Okay, so let's get into this. So we saw the signal path. So you should have a decent understanding of kind of how the signal flow works. Now we're just going to take a look at how to actually apply this. So this is my main mix on my mixer, and I'll just kind of dial up a generic mix. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna recall something else here. I'm gonna just let's start with a rock band scene, just to get myself a good bass with some instruments already selected here. Cool. Yeah, so now this looks like it might be a mix. So now I can dial this up. I can kind of build myself a quick fader mix here. And I'm just going to work with my first 8 channels just to save some time, but you can use your imagination and imagine, I've got a full 24 channel mix happening here. But just looking at our first 8 channels, here's my mix. We're going to ignore most of the labeling on the auxes here, but let's just go into aux1. Actually, let's just rename this. We'll rename this broadcast. Cool. All right. So now I got to get my mix happening for my broadcast, and I'm going to make it slightly different. Maybe I want a bunch of overheads in the broadcast, something like that. Okay, so here's my broadcast mix. Fine and dandy. That's going out to my broadcast. All sounds good. Now I'm going to go down to aux9, and I'm going to go to this tab here, aux out 1 through 8. And you can see that now if I do this while still in aux1, you'll notice that is grayed out. So there is a slight limitation on what auxes can be sent to other auxes, and it's 1 through 8 can be directed to 9 through 14. But 9 through 14, it doesn't go backwards. 9 through 14 can't go to 1 through 8. So it's only 1 through 8, and they only go to 9 through 14. That's still 8 channels that you can, 8 auxes that you can send to another few auxes. All right, let's go back into 9 here. So now we do have this available to us. So I can come to this bank here, and I have my auxes 1 through 8 on individual faders. So these are essentially the master fader for each of those mixes. And if I want to take my broadcast mix into this mix here, all I have to do is slide that up. And now I'm hearing exactly what's happening in my broadcast mix in aux 9 simultaneously. So now I have 2 auxes that are sending identical signals. And all I had to do was pull up a single fader in this second aux. And now if I go back into my broadcast mix, any change that I make here, I'm also making the same changes in my aux 9 because I've sent the main output here directly to this aux. So it's an active live mix. And there you have it. And then, as I demonstrated in the PowerPoint, after pulling up my main mix here, I can then, if I need to, I can blend in a little more of my individual instruments like this, either on the individual channels, or if I'm utilizing DCAs or subgroups. So let's say I put my drum set on a subgroup, and I've got all of my sections sectioned out on DCAs. That actually might be done for me. Yeah, it is. In our awesome house rock band scene, I've got pre-created DCAs based on all of my instrument groupings. So I have a drum set DCA, I have my bass, guitars, keyboards, backing and lead vocals. I've also got a couple DCAs set up for backing tracks, and all my monitor wedges are all on a single DCA, which is a good idea to do that. That's a nice little DCA trick. Anyway, within my aux 9, let's say I want to give it a little bit more drum set on top of what I'm getting from my broadcast mix. I can go into my DCA and just bring up the DCA fader a few dB and blend the DCA in with my aux 1 mix. Just right there, you can see how easy it is to start blending these things together and really kind of utilize the routing options here in really creative ways to get easy to manage and easy to create discrete mixes for multiple locations that might be in your venue or your house of worship. There you go. So the other thing that you can do, you can apply the same principle here where I'm sending an aux to another aux. You can apply that with the main mix. Okay, so now let's look at the main mix again. My awesome main drum mix here. Let's take the example of a venue that's using maybe some outside delay speakers. Maybe they've got an outside seating area or even like just a patio area that is enough distance away from the main area and is also outside. So we've got the dedicated speakers to support that area. Not only do we need to probably apply a little bit of time delay, but we need somewhat of a custom mix there, because if we just send it the main mix, which is what we're going to start with, depending on how far away this location is and what our main mix is doing, we might need to custom tailor that as well, like I've shown you. And that works primarily the same way. If we go into aux 2 here for this example, I'll change this. I'll call this delay. Okay, so now this is going to be our aux output to our delay feeds. We're going to say this is an outdoor patio area. So we still can hear a little bit of the indoor mix. Let's say we have like an open air wall that kind of leads out to a big patio area. We can apply some time delay here, like this. Apply how much time delay is required. And then all we have to do to get our main mix into our delay speaker output is we're going to go to the aux output 9 through 10. Whoops. We're going to push that. Aux output 9 through 10. And on this fader bank, in every single one of my auxes, I have this fader, which is labeled main. This is your main fader output. You have a dedicated fader for your main mix in all of your auxes. So if you need to get your main mix into an aux, it's as simple as pulling up this fader, just like sending aux 1 to aux 9 in my previous example. Same principle, but now I'm sending the main mix into one of my auxes, okay? So that's sounding good. I've got my main mix just automatically being sent to my delay patio speakers. Now, let's say, when you're inside, when you're in the main performance room, the drums are really loud. So in the mix for that room, I don't have a lot of the drums in the PA because you're getting enough of the drums naturally off of the stage when you're in the room. On the patio, that's not the case. We're not in the room with the drums. So my main mix is a little light on the drums, as people out there aren't really getting the presence of the drums very well. So again, I can do the same thing that I just showed you. I either go in and I can blend in a little bit of my individual drum faders, or since I've already got a DCA set up, I can come in here and I can just pull up the drum DCA and blend the DCA with my main, which is being delivered through this single channel here. So again, super easy, super quick, very easy to manage throughout the performance, and know that you're getting good results in all of your locations.
Yes, definitely.
Really, that's the whole demonstration. It's as easy as that. And it's kind of just up to you to kind of play with that and get those blends working correctly for you if you're in one of these situations.
Right. I have 2 active scenes that I use on a regular basis. The first one I'm going to show you is actually one that I'm creating for a house of worship training that's talking about this very thing that you're teaching. And then the other one is one that I created for Campus Jacks, and I can talk about the various different routing that I have up for that. So really quick, I am going to switch cameras. Okay, you guys can hear me okay? Because I'm using my AirPods.
I can hear you just fine, yeah.
Okay, my AirPods aren't nearly as cool sounding as my interface mic, but nevertheless, this is all we get.
No worries. We got you.
Okay, so if we look over here at the left, this is all my output routing. And in our house of worship situation, and I created this one based on what my church is already doing now. So I started actually with the first 6 auxiliaries being sent to monitors. And keyboard player often uses a wedge. So we have a wedge available for him, and the worship leader is using a wedge, and the background vocalist is using a wedge. Then on 4 through 6, the electric guitar, the bass player, and the drums are using in-ear monitors.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose to keep all my monitors together on outputs 1 through 6 because it makes it easier for me to look at. When it comes to setting up a session, everything, to run a smooth show or service, it comes down to workflow and how easy it is for you to look at and manage at a second's notice. This is why 100%. I'm thinking of it this way.
Yeah.
So I have decided to put my broadcast mix on auxiliary 7 and 8. And I have made my broadcast mix be in stereo because the live stream is able to receive in stereo. And right now, especially during the pandemic, there are probably about 70% or so who are still watching online on their TV. So they're listening to a beautiful stereo broadcast mix. This stereo broadcast mix is a completely separate mix from the house. I chose not to feed any of the house into this mix, so I could just tailor it perfectly to what I needed. And I can mix those effects exactly to where I need them, which are going to be entirely different from where the house is.
Right.
So this is why I chose to make an entirely separate mix for my broadcast mix. In our church, we have 4 different zones that we feed, or 3 are actually zones and 1 is the assisted listening system. I have right here, we call it the foyer. Other people may call it the lobby. And then we have the cry room where the mothers take their crying babies. And then we have the courtyard. We have outdoor seating available for people in the courtyard. And having the outside seating has helped our church to stay distanced as needed. So that's been helpful. And then right here on this mix, we have the assisted listening system. And what I've chosen to do, instead of sending the house mix into these 4 zones, I'm sending my perfectly mixed broadcast mix. Now, the way I set my broadcast mix, since I'm the only mixer, is I will cue that broadcast mix. So when I'm listening through headphones, I am only listening to that mix. I'm actually having to switch off back and forth to hear what's going on in the house and then what's happening in the broadcast mix and make adjustments. I've chosen to do my broadcast mix in post fader, meaning when I move a house fader, it affects the broadcast mix because I am the only person mixing, and I need those changes to be reflected in my broadcast mix.
Yep, very smart.
So that's why I did it that way. Then I need to go send this broadcast mix to my other spaces. I've chosen the broadcast mix because it's already perfectly mixed. One thing to note that I have to do in my broadcast mix, the handheld mic, which is for announcements, and the headset mic, which is the pastor teaching, has to be pushed way out in my broadcast mix because they're just naturally quieter than the band. And I need my levels to remain consistent throughout the entire live stream. My meters over here on the master should be hitting around 0 like the entire time. So I may have to ride that master fader to make that happen, or quickly come back into these faders and make the adjustment to match. Otherwise, people are going to be turning their devices or their TVs up and down, and that gets really frustrating.
Sure.
So that is being sent to the live stream. Now we're going to send that broadcast mix to the foyer. So actually,
there you go.
Here we go. Here's the foyer. And you can see that I pushed those two faders up into the foyer mix. Now, some of you are looking and say, you just push a stereo mix up into a mono mix. Yes, that is correct. Now, what it does is it mono sums the mix. You're still hearing the culmination of the stereo mix, but now it's just been squeezed into mono.
There you go.
And what happens is certain things will still be a little out of whack in that mono mix. And that's where I come back and just make the other adjustments, add maybe a little bit of keyboards to that. I'll just come and make the adjustments so that mono mix isn't totally out of whack, turning that stereo mix into a mono mix. I have sent my broadcast mix to the cry room. So the mothers and babies are getting amazing broadcast mix now.
There you go.
And so is the courtyard. They're getting an amazing broadcast mix. At our church, we use an assisted listening system. So this mix also has to be sent to the transmitter that is sending signal for the hearing impaired. The hearing impaired, they get a pack and an ear, I don't know what it is, an ear bud or whatever that they stick in their ear. And that's how we help them to be able to hear better. So that's the situation with the church mix and how the output routing is used in this situation.
Cool.
Hey, go ahead.
Before we move on, a couple things that you touched on that I kind of just want to speak to you just for a second. And we already kind of set this up, but just to reiterate, the reason we're using your broadcast mix to go to these other locations, is because it is a unique and perfectly mixed, self-contained mix. It is not reliant on being in the actual room, because that makes
it's completely discrete. Yes,
completely discrete. Yeah. And so now we already have that created. It's perfect to use in more than just our broadcast application. If we have these other physical locations that are not attached to the main space, your main worship space, that need that independent sound and that unique discrete mix. You've already done that work. So you're just kind of repurposing it. The other thing that I want to touch on real quick, is you mentioned that you run that in post. So for anybody who might not know what that means, I'm not going to get too deep into it. But essentially, when you run an aux in post, it's called post fader versus pre fader. The default is pre fader, meaning that your main fader mix has no effect on any of the audio going to that aux mix. So you have your aux mix fader that dictates that level, right? When you switch it to post, that means now the signal is being picked off after your main fader in your main mix and being sent into that mix after that fader. So your main mix fader will affect the level that you're getting in that mix. And usually when you do that, you kind of send all of the signals that you have in your mix to more or less a uniform level. I mean, you again, probably like you saw in her mix, they're tweaked slightly, but for the most part, we're giving signal to that mix, but we still want any of the changes that we make in our main mix to translate into that new mix as well. And in the case of what Golden just showed us, you know, that's more or less what she's done. She's got everything very close in level with some slight variations. She pointed out her pastor mic. She has to push up a little bit. The other thing that she's using that for is to build a custom effect mix. So she's able to 100% control her effects, you know, for that mix independently from what's happening in the main mix, while still kind of hearing her level changes that she's making throughout this service.
Yes, and the reason I add a bit more effects in the broadcast mix because it helps to create the live experience.
Yeah, so cool.
It's very, very dry if you don't have effects properly set in your broadcast mix. You want people to feel air and space, and that's something that adding a little extra effects in the broadcast mix will do. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right, that's all I wanted to say. Let's check out Campus Jacks.
Yes, let me get back to my other camera. And real quick, I am switching over to that. So this is my Campus Jacks setup. And again, like my church setup, I have monitors 1 through 6 right here for wedges and in-ear monitors, just because that really quickly allows me to identify the musicians' mixes because they're asking for changes pretty much all throughout the program. And like I did in the last scene, 7 and 8 are my broadcast mix. 7 and 8 are the last 2 outputs in the line that can be shared into auxes 9 through 14. So that's why the broadcast mix ends up being in 7 and 8. And this here as well is set as a stereo broadcast mix. Now, our live stream, we have a complicated little system. It actually goes to another mixer, and there's other things happening in another space, and microphones and all this.
You're doing some sub
kind of things. Yes, for the live stream, we have another producer who's actually switching between different mixes. We have the interview microphones. We have the mix that I'm running from house, and he has media that's being dispersed. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, that's a pretty complicated situation. Yeah, cool. That's cool.
Now at Campus Jacks, we're using the K212Cs. So we have aux 13 and 14 assigned to our subs. You can hook them up in stereo, but I've discovered that there was coupling between the two in the center. So the way I offset that was just by using my ear. I set some delay. I set 19.2 feet of delay or 17 milliseconds of delay to one side to move that lobe around so that we weren't getting the coupling of the bass in the middle. And so now it's even throughout as I walk across the venue. So that's why my subs are separated into 2 instead of being linked together. The other thing we have at Campus Jacks, our tent is quite long, so we need delay speakers. And for the delay speakers, I chose to extend the house to the delay speakers. And right here, you can see this is my main fader on aux 11 and 12. And I pushed up my main fader in there. But here's something that happens. When I go back, because I don't, in many cases, I won't even assign snare and overheads and hat to the house because drums are already so loud and the reflections coming off the plastic tent walls make it so loud that I don't need drums in the house. So I will unassign those from the left-right main mix. But by the time we get back to the delay speakers, I need to add back some of those drums because Yeah, I'm missing those from the mix. So I add back about that much or so in addition to my left-right main out. The other thing that suffers once you get back to the delay speakers are the electric guitar. The electric
Oh, yeah.
guitar amps are quite loud up front, so
Yep.
I have barely any of them in the house.
Very
But once
common.
we get back to the delay speakers, I need to pump that electric guitar out there
Yep.
so it can be heard.
People in the back want to
And
hear those guitar solos.
yes, exactly. Yeah, so that is a situation with Campus Jacks. We don't have any routing to spaces, but the routing to the delays is
No,
what I
that's
wanted people
a
to
good
see.
example. Yeah, that delay example is a great example.
Oh, I have one more very important thing to show you on those delays. Those delays are set 36.1 feet back from the front of house speakers. So
Yep.
I dialed in my delay to the amount of feet from the house speakers until the audio lined up. And that is something that I use my ears for.
Yep.
I stand back where the delay speakers are and I keep delaying it until it aligns.
Yeah. So
now, if
what are we aligning? What's the purpose of applying delay there?
well, sound travels at a distance of gosh, I think it's 1,100 feet per second.
Yeah, I don't remember the equation.
Something I don't remember the equation, but I just know how to listen for it to line up.
Sure.
So since it's a relatively slow distance, like slow speed when you think about it, and you can noticeably hear it when you back up from the main speakers and have another set of speakers going.
Yep.
So I have to tell the mixer to delay those speakers until the time it takes for the front of house sound to arrive at the delay speakers.
Yep.
They all have to arrive at the same time to the listener's ears. Otherwise, you'll hear a tap tap. You'll hear
like a slap.
hear the delay. Yeah, a slap, and it makes hearing unintelligible and kind of mixed up sounding for the listener. So delay is pretty important. When you're in other rooms, like if you're sending signal to other rooms like we were in our church, if the church can hear the sanctuary, like if those speakers that are set in another room are like, if you're still hearing the sanctuary, you'll have to delay those speakers to what the sanctuary front of house is. Now, fortunately, in our church, there's doors and everywhere between, so we didn't have to apply delay to those. But that if, for example, the sanctuary doors are open and the foyer speakers are there, you would have to apply the amount of time that it takes for those front of house speakers to arrive at the foyer speakers, apply that amount of delay so that the people walking in won't hear this huge.
Yes, you won't get that slap echo thing. And it's fairly with the, dialing it up on the mixer, it's fairly easy to figure that out with your ear. You dial it up and you'll hear the point at which that slap goes away essentially. And everything just tightens up and becomes really sharp and clear.
So those delay speakers, Jake is asking, how are they hooked up physically to the mixer? Well, in my last scenario, I used auxiliary, let me look real quick, 11 and 12 to set up my delay speaker. So I took those out of 11 and 12 on my mixer and then plug them into the speakers. Delay speakers are really no different than monitor speakers, but it's the way you're mixing them that is different. But they're just if you have to think of them as a monitor, think of it that way.
The purpose is different. Yeah. Instead of giving a mix to a performer on stage, now we're using that to serve another location for an audience.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And you know what's pretty cool with delay speakers? The thing that's always a problem is like running cables, but it's possible, and I've done it before and it worked brilliantly, was to use a wireless in-ear system and
well, there you go.
Yeah, just Velcro the receiver to the speaker stand where the delay is, and then take that 1/8 inch there out, and this one into the speaker, the XLR into the speaker.
Look at you.
And back at your auxiliary send is where you have your transmitter that's transmitting the speaker, and that's how you can do wireless delays. It's awesome.
Man,
a bit expensive, but it works.
A bit, yeah, but hey, that's a cool trick.
And I imagine, the companies that have the money to do that do it. I happen to have access to in-ear monitor systems when I need them, so I can make it work when I have to.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a cool trick. I wanted to back up real quick and touch on a couple things that you mentioned regarding your subwoofer outputs for campus jacks.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you discovered that there was some coupling happening. I just want to really quickly kind of just explain coupling. Is when you have two loudspeakers that are either touching each other or within a close enough proximity to each other, in which the energy, the vibration, the sound waves that are being created by those will literally kind of fuse together. They kind of couple together, and you get essentially a greater effect of those sound waves. It increases the amplitude of those sound waves. And
yeah, it was about 6 dB louder in the middle than it was on the sides for us at Campus Jacks.
So that is something, that is a natural phenomenon that can happen, that you might want to be able, you might have to watch out for and then compensate for, like Golden did by using her delay. If you just kind of slightly delay one of those, it's going to basically take, instead of those sound waves kind of resonating and hitting each other at the same exact time, and coupling together, and if one of them is just slightly delayed, so now they don't exactly line up, so they can't couple together, but it's not enough of a delay to make it sound weird to your ear,
Right. And I walked back and forth across the venue till it was even, and that's how we figured out the delay point. You know who taught me that? John Graves. John Graves actually came down.
Yep.
Yeah, he came down and showed me why that works that way. So now I know for every future situation how to fix that problem.
Yeah. So that was a cool thing that you kind of just organically mentioned. And I thought it was cool to talk about for a second. And if you actually want to know, I'm not sure if it's been published yet, but if you're interested on more just general subwoofer knowledge, we've got a really, really cool blog that's going to hit QSC.com very soon if it hasn't already been published. I'm not sure, but take a look out for that. We've got a lot of really cool information on subwoofer placement and things like that.
Yeah, there's a great video on that you guys made for NAMM too.
There is,
you can find on YouTube, the QSC YouTube site.
I'm gonna try and repurpose that a little bit and kind of get that into a more of a broad audience. But yeah, exactly. Cool. I think we did it. I think we got through that. That was a fairly complicated topic, but I think we did it. I think we covered it. Hopefully that wasn't too overwhelming for anybody out there. I know a lot of times you start talking about signal routing, some people can kind of glaze over, but
but you know what? It's super important. Once you can grasp it, sky's the limit. You can send your signal anywhere you want and make it do what you want. Yeah, we touched on a few things, but you can think of all different ways to use that routing to suit your purposes.
Exactly. We could go on for another 2 hours.
I know.
But hopefully that was, a concise explanation, paired with a few examples on what you might want to do with that. And so if you can apply this to those specific scenarios, awesome. Hopefully maybe if you kind of get the idea of how the routing works, you can definitely kind of get creative on your own and think of your own ways that you can apply these things to whatever you're doing and whatever mixes you're creating.
Absolutely.
Cool. So with that, I think I'm gonna take us out here. Do you have anything that you mention or plug?
Yes,
Golden?
really quick. I just wanted to plug our groups.
Yes.
Before I go, wanted to let you know about our Facebook groups if you haven't already joined them. First is the QSC TouchMix group. If you own a TouchMix or are interested in owning a TouchMix, or even if you don't own one yet, but find yourself mixing on one, if you find these tutorials that we're doing on TouchMix interesting, that is a great group to go to see what others are up to and how they are using their equipment and how they solve problems with their TouchMix. The other Facebook group we have is hosted by QSC and myself. It's called Church Sound Training. It was actually created for church sound people and their volunteers, but the audio concepts that are taught are universal and applicable across the board.
100%.
Because adding to your audio knowledge and understanding helps you to operate your TouchMix and all other audio equipment with better skill and precision.
It's the truth. The more you know.
Yep, absolutely. So this has been fun, Jason. Thank you so much for suggesting this. Yeah,
absolutely.
Very cool.
Thank you out there, everyone who visited us today and logged on and checked this out. Hopefully this was helpful. We'll be back on here hopefully next week with another topic. Just trying to get as much information out there to you guys as possible and have some fun along the way. So that'll be it for this one. Thank you guys
Thank
so
you
much.
so much for joining us.
We'll see you next time.